Today I would like to consider the question of Anglophilia. The question of Anglophilia, the temptation to become an Anglophiliac, is one that every American intellectual faces. Every American who fancies himself an intellectual or is a would-be intellectual who is into literature and the arts and so forth, is at some point faced with this temptation to go Anglophile. And I can speak from my own personal experience on this matter because, well, England is the mother tongue. England is the land that produced Chaucer, that produced Shakespeare, and many other fine writers. Even more than that, though, I recall thinking or feeling that the British just had a way with words that suggested that they had they retained more just of a literary sense of things, even if we're just talking about ordinary citizens who weren't big time readers. Just something about the expressions that they used as opposed to the ways that we talk here in North America. There still is this sort of intimidation factor. I don't know if intimidation is the right word, but there's this sense of that when you use expressions that you use in America, that you sound like kind of a yahoo when you compared to even slang terms that they use, even vulgar slang terms, and there are a ton of them. There's a ton of vulgarities in England, and there's a ton of very vulgar people living in the United Kingdom. No offense to anybody who lives in the United Kingdom. I might be talking to some of them right now, in fact. Most vulgarities that I can think of, most of the vulgarities that sound the most vulgar, in fact, are British-derived vulgarities. But that, again, speaks to the fact that they somehow retain this kind of allure about them, literarily speaking. And so for a lot of people who don't really, a lot of American, intellectual or intellectual wannabes or intellectual hangers-on, intellectual American NPR listeners and such, there's just this kind of unthinking, unexamined Anglophilia that develops. And I'm not poo-pooing it completely because there is a lot of British language, British culture, British history that is formidable, and I do find it very interesting that today it happens more and more when they're trying to find some young hot new star in some movie that or maybe not necessarily people that by name, but somebody turns up playing I don't know, a teenager in some new monster movie, high budget monster movie, speaking with an American accent, or the hero in a detective movie, speaking with an American accent, and it turns out these people are British, or in some cases Australian, and it's kind of like where did all the native North Americans go to play North American roles? It's a little bit odd, but the explanation that I've heard for this has been that it's harder to find Americans who have the kind of articulacy. Is that a word? Articulacy? articulateness that they're looking for. And so they choose someone who is not American, who is better spoken, better presented, just because here we're a bunch of illiterates over here in this part of the world. I don't know what to think of that. I know there are plenty of perfectly articulate Americans who can play the roles of Americans. So I don't know. I'm not sure what to think about that. But I do know, to return to my main point, that Anglophilia is a real it's a real problem. I'm just going to go ahead and call it a problem. I won't say it's a disease or anything like that. I won't say it's an affliction. I won't say I won't talk it down to that extent. But this kind of unexamined Anglophilia amongst North American would-be intellectuals is an issue, is a problem. Why do I say this? Well, when we look at British culture, historically speaking, I think there's a lot of good that can be derived. I think the whole common law, which was more or less taken from England, as I understand it, and I'm no historian, but it's my understanding that a lot of what was eventually codified by the founders, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom, privacy rights, generally speaking, that these all came out of basic common law understandings, which grew out of Anglo-Saxon traditions. And it's indeed true, there are parts of the world where individual rights, individual expression plays a much smaller role, or is even seen as something to be dismissed out of hand for favor of the collective. In the East, I think there can be no doubt in my mind that is almost certainly the case. And even the Prussian tradition, the Prussian tradition which birthed the school system with the people being taught in between the ringing of bells and shuffling from one room to another, this whole Pavlovian kind of vibe. English common law really, John Stuart Mill, little that I know of him, and other proto-libertarian philosophers, of course Burke, who wasn't proto-libertarian, but who was, I think, concerned with liberty and with the problems of fanaticism as were being manifested at the time in France by the revolution over there. So there are a lot of good, solid things that come from the British tradition. But at the same time, and I know that this whole subject is me biting off more than I can probably chew. So I know some people will come at me and say I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm just an ignorant Yank and all that. But I think I'm I'm saying some things here that are worthwhile and that are true, even though I don't know everything there is to know about this subject, admittedly. So there's the history of the British, and then there's the reality of what Great Britain has become, and perhaps to an extent what it has always been. And that's a problem, because you look at Great Britain today, we're talking about a country in which you can get fined or arrested for making off-color remarks. You know, if somebody one of their somebody from the police, from Vice Squad or whatever they call them over there, hears you sharing what they deem to be a homophobic comment or a sexist or racist comment, while you're on the subway, they can fine you or arrest you. People have gone to jail for tweets over there, and not tweets that not anything that involves in the encouragement of violence, but just I remember a guy making an unfriendly tweet about some soccer player that had racist overtones, and he went to jail for it. And who's the guy, of course, who did the funny thing where he made his dog Zeke Heil, and was actually taken to court? Count Dankula. We've got the UK is the surveillance state par excellence. It may be even worse over there than it is here in the United States, but beyond that, the actual law of the land is worse over there, because here in the United States there is still freedom of speech. Now, to a great extent, that's been eroded by the fact that if you step out of line in any way, you get destroyed. I'm quite aware of that. I've had my own experiences with that. But that aside, I think we've got better laws over here still. We still have laws that protect dissent, the free expression of dissent. Didn't the UK just pass laws against assembling? We can't assemble. We can't get together and assemble anymore because that's dangerous. You have to do what the government tells you to do. I remember when they took I'm blanking on his name, the right-wing guy, when they just yanked him off and forbade the media from commenting on what they did. This was a couple of years ago, or was it maybe 3 or 4 years ago? There's a lot that's not right about Great Britain, Great British, certainly government and culture today. I'm going to end this. This ended up becoming a bit more expansive than I thought it was going to be, so I'm just going to end this portion of my discussion of this subject, and I will get back to it in another video. Please if you're interested in my work, please go to altrightnovelist.com, and my name is Andy Nowicki.